It's a pleasure to be with this fantastic panel and having this conversation about this very timely topic. So let's start with a very quick round of just introductions, telling us a little bit about what you do in your business, and then we're going to jump straight into how does that relate to AI, and then we'll talk about future trends and where is that taking us, and then maybe close around the impact of how that is affecting our life. So let's start from the beginning. Tell us a little bit about Amazon Web Services, and especially what are you doing in Egypt?
Thank you so much, Ayman. First of all, it's a real pleasure. I feel privileged to be on this podium. AUC is very close to our hearts. I graduated so many years ago, and AUC is not changing, especially this campus. So thank you so much for giving me this opportunity to be on this stage. Amazon Web Services, I'm sure most of the audience are already aware of this company. It's the largest company globally that provides, it's the largest cloud platform that is used by millions and millions of customers all over the world. We've been on operation almost for 17 years now. There is usually a confusion that happens in Egypt between Amazon Web Services as a cloud provider and our sister company, Amazon.com, which is our e-commerce platform that's been in operation years before us. What we're trying to do and what I'm personally trying to do in my current professional capacity is to help our clients and partners innovate, scale, and save costs by utilizing the power of cloud. AWS is relatively new to Egypt and also new to the region. I've personally been doing my job almost now for 4 years. And I want to share with great pride that when I took over this job, a lot of people thought, you haven't done your calculations well, because if I take Egypt, which was the initial country I was responsible for, it's not a very open environment for cloud. Today, I'm very proud to share that the government of Egypt has taken very serious steps towards opening up, introducing new regulations and legislations that both facilitates and clarifies the use of cloud, and to the general benefit of the government because of the cost savings. And there is very serious efforts towards data classification, as we're aware of. Second, the businesses that are really saving cost and innovating on top of the cloud. And 3, us as citizens and as consumers that are getting these cost savings passed to us and these innovations passed to us eventually. So this is in a very, very high level what AWS does, myself as a professional, and the evolution that I personally have seen in Egypt, and it's trickling down to other parts of the world. I'm also responsible for North Africa, and we're seeing more and more adoption and openness to the power of the clouds.
Fantastic. So just before you go, so should we expect that some of the fintechs would be able to use AWS services soon?
So as I mentioned, the government has taken really very clear steps towards, and I wouldn't say deregulating cloud, because Egypt never had a clear prohibition on the use of cloud. So what the government is doing now is adopting a cloud-first policy as a government. So in principle, anything that's not classified should go to the cloud, which is a huge step. And what applies to the government, I'm confident it applies to the private sector, because in principle, the private sector is after profit maximization. And anything that reduces the cost is to the benefit of the business and to the consumer. So yes, in due time, a lot of the fintechs, and this is the trend globally, and I want to share one data point with you. Almost 90% of the financial sector's industry globally is using some elements of AI. 82% of fintechs are de facto using AI. And AI means cloud in all frankness. So it is definitely coming. if not already there, because we have very also generous programs that support startups. A lot of the startups are scaling on AWS in Egypt. So I'm also confident there are fintechs that are already using AI and are scaling on AWS.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Azza. Ahmed, you're one of the people who've actually been on the ground doing actual work. So tell us about what Synapse Analytics is doing, especially on the fintech side.
Sure. Thank you so much, Business Forward. Thank you so much, Dr. Ayman, for inviting me. And I really appreciate the Business Forward team for changing my picture, because I have Roji Abaza vibe on the banner. I don't know how this picture landed there. I took this picture as a joke, and then it's everywhere now. So thank you, Business Forward team, for your agility and your fast response. So Synapse Analytics, we are a company that was established in 2018 with the purpose of helping companies basically adopt artificial intelligence. Our core competency lies in something called ML ops, or machine learning operations. So basically, we help to take AI from the lab to the market. So basically, actually, let me share the statistic. There is a Gartner statistic that said that actually more than 85% of all AI projects failed, and they never go to production. And this is where our ethos is. So we help companies have AI algorithms into the market, working with systems, working with making decisions. It has a very complicated life cycle, and this is what our company solves. Now, I know with all the interesting stuff that's happening currently in the AI field with Gen AI and Midjourney and ChatGPT, we are in, I think, one of the most boring areas of AI. So, you know, I have a very I have a very encouraging group of friends, and I was telling a friend about the things that we do. He told me, you know what, I feel like for a city, you're like the sewage system. So nobody appreciates you, nobody sees you, but without you, there can be no civilization, which is both sad and good, I believe. So that's our main competency. So we help to take AI to production. We help to operationalize artificial intelligence into the market. Now, the fintech and how we help fintech and how finance and how we help financial companies in general to adopt artificial intelligence. I would say we help them in four main areas. So the first one is, the everyday banking, the everyday financing, where companies can, or financial companies or fintech can onboard their clients, by taking a picture of their ID or taking, uploading the financial statements, commercial registers, doing like the traditional KYC, know your customer stuff, helping them with document management, helping them with extraction. When it comes to Gen AI, and I think we'll touch on this, the retrieval augmented generation, which is very, very big now within the fintech and the financial sector in general. The second thing would be, I believe, dynamic financing. And dynamic financing is all about launching financial policies and credit policies to the market as fast as possible with all the monitoring and observability possible to accept more people, to raise the eligibility of more people while lessening the risk of their clients. Now, one of the things that I believe that in the financial market are a bit misunderstood is that there are good customers and bad customers. Though from what we've seen so far, we believe that there are actually known customers who you have data on and how to deal with, and there are unknown customers. And I think that's a discrepancy that's found in the financial industry. Now, the third thing I believe would be what we call model as a service, or banking as a service, or underwriting as a service. So basically, some companies in the market have a very unique data exposure on a segment that were not addressed before by the financial markets. So what we do is we help them to build their AIs, help them to build their models, and host them onto our MLOps platform. And then we help to power other players in the market with these models. And we have they take like a return with every call, for example, if they have a credit scoring algorithm for the unbanked, we help them to take this model to use it themselves, of course, and then have other people also use the models for per hit pricing. So they get, with every call the bank, for example, makes, they take a revenue share out of it. Now, the fourth thing, I think it's portfolio management. So this is all about how you take customers, how you match customers with the right products, how you price your products, and so on and so forth. So everyday banking, dynamic financing, banking as a service or model as a service, and portfolio management. So this is how we help the financial sector.
Fantastic. You answered my next two questions. That's good. Let me get to Amr. And Amr, tell us a little bit about what Blink does. And then next round, I'm going to get into what you're doing with AI. What do you do as a company?
So Blink started around maybe 2.5 years ago. We launched operations in late 2021. It's a digital consumer finance company. This is a very interesting space in this market in Egypt. We have roughly 5.5 million credit cards in circulation in Egypt, held by, roughly speaking, around 3 million card holders and 65 million adults. So while it seems that maybe you feel you get a call every day, a couple of times, people trying to sell you personal loans and so on, and you might feel that the market is over-penetrated in certain areas, it's definitely extremely under-penetrated elsewhere in the market. So the whole premise of Blink when we started is how can we increase credit penetration and give people an affordability product that they deserve to have, and offer this in a differentiated way that makes it more accessible. And we wanted to focus on the key pillars that can make this happen, and it's really a few things. It's about being more inclusive. So how to offer credit and affordability product to a wider slice of the society. And the second thing is how to make it as convenient as possible, to how to tackle all the inconvenient aspects of applying for credit, whether it's how much time it takes, what kind of products you need to present, how it's being processed, and how do you apply and have access to this affordability product. So I wanted to tackle the convenience, the inclusion, and finally to distribute this product in a totally different way, rather than going directly to the consumer, which is very costly, obviously, but other than that, it's less convenient to the customer. To go to the customer where they need the affordability product the most, where they shop. So instead of attracting the average consumer to us and telling them, okay, now you know about Blink, you have your credit facility, you can go and apply, you can go and use it wherever you want. No, empower our merchant partners with our technology, and then you can use this technology to onboard any walk-in customer and have an affordability product. So to be able to deliver this very new and unique way of delivering an affordability product to the customer, we had to rely very significantly on tech and AI in many aspects of the business, whether it's in fraud and managing risk, and how to be more efficient across many aspects of the operations, to how to underwrite and so on. And I think we're just scratching the surface. The potential in that space is massive. It's very complicated and takes a bit of time, but definitely there's a lot of room for using AI in that part of the market.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Amr. Mustafa, now you guys provide a lot of that's happening on the payment side and acceptance side. To tell us about what PayMob and Accept does.
Sure. So first of all, thank you, Dr. Ayman, for this invitation, and thank you everyone for attending. So from my side, I'm Mustafa Mnisi. I'm the co-founder and CTO of PayMob. Among my other co-founders, Islam and Ala. So basically, we started our story back in 2015, where we thought there is a very interesting opportunity when it comes to the payments, as we witnessed like the evolution. It happened already in the US and in Europe. So we believe that the time will come, and definitely we will witness likewise what happened over there will happen as well in Egypt. So we started building our solution, which is back then was focused on the courier payments, which is basically providing the couriers with a sort of mobile point of sale solutions, so that whenever the courier delivers the order, the customer can pay using that sort of device. So we thought about this idea in a very interesting way. We go to the bank and then we do that partnership with those banks, and then accordingly we roll out the solution. And we thought it's a kind of no-brainer. But it turned out it was quite the opposite because back in 2015 and 2016, there were lots of, I would say, bureaucratics when it comes to the banking industry, and the VC sort of landscape wasn't as mature as today as well. And back then, of course, the fintech keyword wasn't even there. So we were very keen that we would be still like believe in the idea, and it took like 2 years until we figured out a deal with one of the acquired banks, and we took it from there. We launched our acceptance solution, and then we moved into the mobile wallets ecosystem that is empowering most of the mobile wallets here in Egypt, like for example, Vodafone Cash, Saib Wallet, CIB, and so forth. And then we moved into the mobile acceptance, and now thankfully we're managing over 87% of the market share and running millions of transactions on a daily basis. And in terms of the expansions, like we recently expanded since last year in Pakistan, Oman, UAE, and last but not least in Saudi.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Mustafa. Now, just a little bit of context now that we've heard all of those introductions from our fantastic team. First, if we look at the fintech space, we have a lot of people providing financial services in a non-traditional way. But what we have here is actually the different layers. So we have at the infrastructure layer, those are making things happen at the tech. We have Amazon Web Services. Then we have PayMob that are making people pay to each other. So this is at the transaction level. Then we have Blink, which is more sitting on top of that. How can I do lending, consumer lending? And there are other people who are doing other types of business lending. And then on top of that, you have people who are looking at how do we actually think about the data and analytics. So this is pretty much the whole pyramid or stack of companies that are allowing that space to operate. If we get to the AI, I think you guys have been seeing a lot of the buzz that's happening, but through those companies, and this is the discussion we want to get into right now, I think it's important to think about AI beyond kind of the fancy buzz that is happening to something that is real and tangible and happening in companies in Egypt, in products that most of you are actually using today. And this is the most important part we want to get out of this panel. How are these things happening on the ground in ways that affect each and every person sitting in the room? And probably how do you project that to happen? So let's start with, I was going to ask you what specifically are you going to doing in AI, and most of you have answered part of that, but let's dig a little bit deeper. And let's start actually from the other way around, maybe with Mustafa. You guys are processing payments, hundreds of millions of transactions of people paying each other, mobile wallets and POS and online and so on. And you have a ton of data, which is the most important part. What specifically are you doing with AI, and how is that affecting the products and services that you have?
Yeah, absolutely. So the thing is that the way that we think about the AI, there are multiple like use cases out of the AI arena. If we're talking about, for example, the use cases that has to do with empowering the products themselves. So of course the fraud detection, this is something that comes in first place, like how can we kind of identify real time whenever there is any sort of transaction, whether online through the e-com or offline through the POS, and ensure that it is not fraudulent. This is one sort of thing. The other thing, for example, is what's called the KYB and the KYC screening, which is the know your customer sort of authentication. So there are those use cases where in order to be able to register, for example, from our side as a merchant, you need to do that liveness detection in order to ensure that you are a real person and not, for example, a fake bot and so forth. So that's actually a use case that is currently live, and we're relying on as well on one of our key partners, Verify, onto that. And third, there is what's called the smart routing as well. So the smart routing basically it would be able to identify real time as well whether the bank is suffering a certain outage or whether it's online. And in case, for example, it is expected like during those operating hours, for example, between 11 p.m. To 12 p.m. based on the historical sort of situations that this specific bank it's mostly suffering from a certain outage during that time. So we would be able to take a decision proactively to switch the transaction to another bank. So these are the sort of, I would say, real life examples of what's happening currently today. Of course, what the AI will implement or would tell us about the future, definitely it's way beyond that. But I'll leave
Hold
it
on the future thing. But actually, one of the questions we're getting is, you have a lot of data and you have a lot of presence and footprint in that space. Are you collaborating with other fintech companies to also support them in adding those dimensions to what they do?
Yeah, absolutely. So through our partners, again, like in order to like deliver the best accuracy model, definitely there needs to be some sort of private data sharing, of course, anonymized. So that sort of thing that we're doing in order to provide the maximum accuracy possible. But it's kind of, I would say, there are certain processes into that thing because at the end of the day, you don't want to share data and then put yourself at risk, for example, of a certain security breach and so forth. So there are certain kind of processes to that.
Fantastic. Tell us a little bit about very specific applications you're doing, probably without getting too technical, in your business that are leveraging data, machine learning, and AI.
Sure. So to put it in very simple terms, essentially one of the key use cases that we had is I have a client that's we're trying to onboard. They're miles away in a store somewhere. We're not present there. And I want to make sure that this person is who he claims he or she is, and onboard them in an as efficient process as possible. With minimal physical documents as possible. So, and that can be done unless you leverage technology and leverage AI. So we've developed our vision technology in-house to be able to match the person's, whatever, like anytime you step into a bank, what they do in terms of onboarding customers, they check that the person, the client in front of them is alive. This ID is a genuine one. And this picture matches the person in front of me. So how can we do that using technology and AI? This is one very important application use case that we currently have. And it literally takes a few seconds. So, but there's a lot at the back end to make sure that this document it's not photoshopped. It's not it meets all the fraud. There are no any fraud red flags in the document design and so on. And on top of that, there are many other fraud checks that we do to make sure that there's nothing weird happening in this transaction, and it should be a legitimate one. So that is one use case. That's definitely what we have right now, and there are many others that are in the pipeline, very interesting. So generally speaking, applications of AI, you'll find that it's either you're trying to drive higher revenue or lower costs, and whichever way you look at it, you'll find so many potential applications in fintech, specifically in lending, using voice to text and trying to automate the customer experience on call centers is something that's definitely we're seeing it happening, and we're putting a lot of effort in that. I think that is one key way that you can drive down costs and give a better customer experience and customer support. Driving more revenue and managing risks in terms of underwriting and how can you underwrite customers and analyze data that you're seeing from customers, especially with the development of the fintech infrastructure and having access to new sources of data. There are a lot that can be done in that space. So unfortunately, We have much more to do in Egypt in terms of developing the infrastructure, the fintech infrastructure specifically. But imagine if you have much more data other than what I score. If I have data on how much taxes you're paying, or your social insurance history, or more about what your living standards, generally speaking, and your lifestyle and so on, and how can you use all that data to decide whether you give credit to a certain person or not. Mobile data is another key source, and so on. How you interpret all this data and decide whether this person is creditworthy and we should give them a chance and or not is definitely that's all will be based on data analytics and machine learning and AI and so on.
You started with a couple of cases that are easy, fraud detection, identification, call center, and those are really great because they affect people's experience and they also reduce your cost. And then you started talking about others where it's about making decisions regarding people's credit. And hopefully, once you have a lot more data points, a lot of people are talking about that kind of credit scoring, credit assessment, and there are fears about the fairness of the process and the inclusivity, especially in a country where a lot of people, a lot of the economy is informal. So do you see these actually layers of adding automated ways to make decisions, or at least to support decisions on extending credit to people? How do you see that actually happening in that industry?
I think one of the key things that will help make sure that we are as fair as possible is really once you start deploying these kind of technology on how much data will you have access to, and to what extent will you be able to train these models to make sure that they're not biased. So, for example, if I train our models entirely on a population or let's say the greater Cairo area, and then go and try to deploy it in INA, then naturally it would be very biased. So it really depends how you train your model and how you make sure that it's not biased and it's well representative of the target market you're after.
And do you think there is something like that is going to happen naturally by the business, or that it needs a regulatory framework to govern it?
No, I think that definitely any regulations that allow us access to more data on customers will help us in a great deal. And in the absence of that data, you start looking for alternative sources of data to underwrite. So it really depends what kind of data would be made available. Luckily, we have a lot of data in digital form. It's much more complicated when you don't have the data in digital form to begin with. So there are a lot of efforts in Masr Qamiyya that has been done over the last few years, and a lot of data is already in digital form. I think that the next step is hopefully an easier one, where you need to take the decision that we want to monetize that data and avail it to a bigger part of the business community because it makes sense and it adds to the market and so on. So ideally, if that happens, that will help as well.
Very interesting. Now, let me jump to Ahmed. Ahmed, you've been working with many financial institutions that are very interested in exploring how to use their own data assets, and you're helping them actually build AI models, machine learning models that would use their data assets. To tell us a little bit about some examples of financial institutions that you have helped, and what are the use cases or applications that they're more interested in building?
Sure. So maybe let me answer this question by first maybe drawing an image of what an AI-powered financial institution would look like. And you know, I'd like to imagine it as a cake, as a cheesecake specifically. And you know, the underlying crust, which is my favorite part of any cake, is to have impeccable engineering. Actually, like Blink is one of the companies that I believe they have incredible engineering team. They don't want to buy anything though from us, but hopefully they will soon. So yeah, so you have to have impeccable engineering in the sense that you need to be able to launch your models as fast as possible. You need to have all the observability and simulation reports to make sure that your models are accurate and are giving you the predictions that you want over willingness and so on. you need to have, and this is something that I feel is missing in our ecosystem, in our product innovation in general, is interoperability, which is basically how you deal with, how you work with others. Like your question to Mustafa, for example, you have data. This data, you're utilizing some of it in making models, but then again, your data could be actually, you could package it in a way and you could power others, and the whole ecosystem benefits from this. And so this is something that I believe, if you have the right engineering team, you could work well with others. You could have data partners. If you're a startup and you don't have any data, you could actually use somebody else's model into your, for example, credit assessments, and then you could be powered in a day, and you could launch your product in a day. So that's the underlying layer. The second layer, I believe, is once you have the engineering ready, you'd access great predictability. So predictability on, for example, again, if we take the lending example, in predicting the repayments of your clients, which ones will be delinquent, which one will default, and so on. You could predict opt-ins, for example. So one of the use cases that we work with one of the banks is we have a list, we have a data set of their debit card users, and we're predicting which one of those debit card users would opt in for credit cards, for example. You could have smart campaigns, all of that from the data that's existing. If you have engineering, and then engineering would bring in predictability. Now, to Amar's point, I think the third layer would be decision flexibility. And this is, I think, key when it comes specifically in lending, because any financial institution is trying to optimize between eligibility, between risk, between profits, between pricing, and all of that. And usually decisions in that specific area are very strict. And you're of course, sometimes you're regulated by different regulators. You don't have the business is completely siloed from the engineering team. So if you want to launch a new credit policy, you throw it to the engineering team tries it out, and then goes back to the business team, and then you go back and forth, and then 2 years later you're not launched. So I think you have to have if you have the right infrastructure, you could have you can access this decision flexibility, and you could launch different policies very quickly, and you could Tom's point as well, you could be able to decide on people that you do not have data on, and you could raise your eligibility criteria. And one of the things that we've seen actually by working with a lot of financial institutions, that usually the problem is not in the underwriting process, it's actually in the product. Because you could find one customer who opted to 2 different products, and one of them, he's very disciplined, they pay on time, they have everything on time, and the other one, they're defaulting and they're delinquent, and so on. So it's all about product, it's all about how you design the customer experience end to end, and then how you can back that up with very flexible policies and so on. And at the end, of course, once you have all of that, basically you could access smart capital management, basically. So we try to help companies to reach that point, to be able to go from data to decision in no time, very quickly, very fast, and be able to diagnose on the fly and change things on the fly, instead of just spending 6 weeks to change just one item in a very, very long policy.
And Ahmed, a lot of what you discussed, and this is very interesting, is not just about the tech side. A lot of people think that the AI will put it in the tech department. Those people are doing something, but this is actually about organizational change, and especially on the product side. So tell us a little bit about that, and if anybody wants to jump in at any point, by the way.
Yeah, so it's definitely all about, like you said, it's all about culture. It's all about how speed to me is very important when it comes to product management. I'm not sure if you guys agree or not, but I think we live in a world where there is, if anybody has seen Interstellar, the movie, there is no time for caution, right? So you have to run very quickly. Sometimes you don't really have to abide by. You don't have to do everything right. Go to the market and learn from the market. And this is why I said that the very, very first layer should be, you have to have impeccable engineering, because you have to absorb these learnings and adapt very, very quickly. So it's all about product culture. I think if we get product right, you'll reach the right customers, you'll provide the right services, you'll scale correctly, and yeah. So that's what I believe the issue is about.
I think this is very important because a lot of people are thinking about AI, how it's going to affect the technology, but fewer are thinking about how it's affect the product. And I don't know how many are thinking about how it's actually going to affect the organizations themselves. But let me jump to Abbas, and then we'll get actually Mustafa, you want to comment?
Yeah, I just would like to add a point here, very interesting, related to this discussion. So actually, I was personally like checking on this specific sort of situation in some startups, and what I found that with the startups that are basically commercially driven, like regardless how technologically the company is advanced, at the end of the day, they wouldn't be able to unleash the power of the AI, because at the end of the day, the guys that really understands, for example, how the technology can work there, and the guys that they built it, would be from the tech and product side. So definitely, in order to ensure that the whole kind of ecosystem and the whole company is aligned and be able to leverage on this new technology, like there would be certain balance between the tech/product led organization, which is happening, for example, in Silicon Valley and the other Western startups, against the commercially driven sort of company. So definitely a balanced approach would be the right way of tackling things, in order to make sure that whichever is implemented, it's really being utilized and it goes into production.
Yeah, and I think this is very interesting that a lot of the startups are actually leading the way, but the most interested people to see how they can actually evolve into that space are the large corporates, banks, healthcare organizations that would probably see the biggest impact in their cost and revenue side, but they're probably the least ready to embrace that, whether from a technical, product, or organizational side. So this is very interesting. As I want to learn from you actually about what is coming to us through or flowing to us through the Amazon Web Services. You're the infrastructure, you're the enabler, you basically are the foundation for all of those companies to work, and also hopefully some of the corporates once they're able to put your data, and you're allowing a lot of that infrastructure to enable products that people were not able to do probably a couple of years ago, whether in the same speed or agility and so on. So what should we expect to come through us that would be very interesting, and that I think companies like the ones here would actually deploy faster into the market? You can read the future in a way and tell us about where the future is heading.
Thank you, Ayman. Actually, we're not just a cloud infrastructure. Certainly, we provide cloud infrastructure, but when it comes to AI in specific, I want to share that our first AI service that was used by our sister company, Amazon.com, started in 2001 internally. So in fact, most of the AI heritage is coming from this side, because they have been heavy users of AI since inception. So in 2001, Amazon.com, which is the e-commerce platform, introduced Recommend for the first time. So based on the data of the buyers and the patterns that has been detected in consumer preferences, we, as a company, the platform started to recommend to buyers what would your preference likely to be, and go and check this X or Y product. Between 2001 and today, a whole spectrum of new AI-driven services were used internally by the company, the various companies, and as well introduced to the market to the users. Specifically in 2023, apart from infrastructure, because infrastructure is just one of 4 major layers that Amazon Web Services is actually democratizing access to capture the AI opportunity, because as per the data that we are aware of, Goldman Sachs, for example, said that the AI opportunity globally is going to generate $7 trillion in global GDP in the coming 10 years. So every single organization, whether we're talking about government, fintech, the private sector, regardless of its size, has the capacity or opportunity to capture a portion of this 7 trillion in the coming 10 years. So what is Amazon Web Services doing to democratize equal access to this 7 trillion? So in addition to infrastructure, which is our foundational layer, cost. So it is lowering the cost of infrastructure. We have our own AWS instances that come quite inexpensively in French, and I'm happy to share with the audience again the nature of these instances in detail, maybe on a one-to-one basis. So this is the basic layer out of 4. And then on top of this, you have the what we have as the layer that if you're building your own, let's say, machine learning model, it provides you with the tools to build and train these models. And this is for a certain segment of organizations that have their own in-house technical skills to start building. And this is the layer that we have the service called SageMaker. Okay. On top of which is comes the third layer, which is the more relatively recent layer that we added. AWS introduced Bedrock, which provides access to a lot of foundation large learning models, so that you not every organization or even government, by the way, has the financial capacity, the technical capacity to build its own large learning model. So you will have access, regardless of your size, to these large learning models that you can take and then start training based on your data, and then start delivering these Gen AI services that are relevant to your business. And we, as AWS, we have our own large learning model, our Titan model. But in this layer, you will also have third-party LLMs that are perfectly accessible to any organization. And this is where, again, I see the democratization happening, because this layer is available, again, irrespective of your size. And for this particular economy in specific, because of the dominance of the micro, small, and medium businesses, this will give access to these size categories of companies to unlimited opportunities to exploit. Coming back to the last layer, which is the fourth layer, these are the ready-made or ready available AI services that come from AWS that you can integrate into your products or services through APIs. So there is a recommend, there is text-to-speech, there is computer vision. Again, if you put this spectrum of 4 layers, I can confidently say that it is providing really a very democratized access to AI services, regardless of your size, your financial capability, your domain of business, and it should allow you to capture, hopefully, a hefty portion of this $7 trillion opportunity that is awaiting economic activity globally, and certainly in Egypt. If this answers your question, yeah.
This is fantastic. So basically, you can store the data, you can manipulate the data, you can learn from that data, and you can use ready models that are out there to actually enhance your business. And I think that's an amazing infrastructure that is coming there. Just a point of explanation for people who may not be savvy. The whole point of AI is that you have a lot of data about something that was happening in the past, whether it's healthcare or financial services and so on. And the model can basically learn from that data to give you trends to predict how things may happen in the future. So this is actually the essence, and having that infrastructure available to build on that is really fantastic. Now, there are a couple of questions on 2 points. One is about cybersecurity, and people are talking about it. Is it safe and secure? What are the issues around that? And a second one, maybe a little bit broader, and that might be something for the whole panel, about the social impact, whether in the short and long term. So let's just make sure we get something about cybersecurity, and then we'll dig deeper for another last round around the social impact as well.
On cybersecurity specifically, definitely this is a concern at the government level and at the enterprise level. And a lot of organizations are investing heavily in cybersecurity, whether we're talking about governments or business enterprise. I talk about the cloud, okay? The security of the cloud. With, again, strong confidence and confidence based on experience, that it provides the level of security that is relevant to the largest of financial organizations, so the largest banks, the largest fintechs, feel very secure in the cloud, specifically because of the level of investments that AWS as a hyperscaler and others have placed in the domain of cybersecurity. We also enable ISVs or innovation in the domain of cybersecurity to take advantage of the cost of the cost reduction related to the cloud, the innovation that is empowered by the cloud. So again, cybersecurity is definitely one of the key areas that are of interest, that are rising as more and more movement is happening in towards the cloud. And again, either the large companies, large hyperscalers are putting significant levels of investment to secure this kind of cloud environment for the users.
Yeah, fantastic. And I think it's very important when you think about cybersecurity is that most people would say, well, the data is hosted here, something happened in that space, then it must be there. But in reality, there are probably 10 or maybe more different stages where the data go through, from the consumer to a tablet, to a website, to somewhere else, through a network, through so many different infrastructure until it reaches your Amazon infrastructure and then coming back. And most of the time, the breaches that happen are on very weak links in the middle that people do not see. And it's usually in a very, very targeted level. So that's actually the reality. So it's becoming a very important issue, but probably the infrastructure is not the weakest link. The weakest links happen in the day-to-day interaction and consumer behavior that needs a lot of education. You see fraud cases targeting people. Okay, so we're getting close to the finish line, and I want to ask each one of you a very specific question in 1 minute. 18 months from now, not interested in 10 years or 20 years, 18 months from now, one big thing that you think is going to be coming, whether from your company or outside, that's going to be important and relevant for everybody. So whoever wants to start in whatever order. Amr got the mic, so Amr, you go ahead.
No, I'm not sure where to start. It's changing every day. I mean, you don't need to go as far as 18 months.
Then give me 6 to 12.
It's I mean, AI is in everyone's pocket. We're using it every day. It's not like a weird thing that you try to imagine robots doing weird stuff like we used to see in the movies in the old days. We're using it every day. It's every time you open Google Maps and try to go from one place to the other. It's
from Blink. Anything specific from Blink you see?
From Blink, definitely. In I think the most interesting part is how to use it in underwriting. That's then we can see improvements down the line in many other aspects. But I think the biggest leap forward will be in underwriting. If we can deploy it more and trying to improve risk-adjusted returns, that would be a huge accomplishment.
It's fantastic. So underwriting is making credit decisions basically for people. Mustafa?
Yeah. When it comes to PayMap, so basically the way that we think about the AI, like 12 to 18 months, I would say, basically imagine that there would be a sort of a co-pilot or AI assistant for our merchants. So basically, each and every merchant that is belonging to a specific industry, he would be able to assess, for example, what would be the best decisions to take from a business perspective in order to increase, for example, the revenue per month or the profitability, and which type of payment methods that he needs to accept, and sort of tweaks that, for example, can be done as well on the e-com. So definitely having that sort of assistant would have a real value to the merchant. But like ultimately the way from a holistic perspective, I would say consider the following, that personally, I think that the AI evolution from the fintech perspective would yield into having for each and every one of us a co-pilot where it would have the direct access to the funds and the capital of each and every person, and it would tell him or her what would be the best decisions to take, or even can take automatically those decisions in an autonomous way. But definitely right after implementing this comes the security and sort of financial risk considerations, because most of the assets at the by then would be controlled by the AIs.
Thank you, Mustafa. Ahmed?
So like in the next 18 months, we have a very ambitious goal, and it's, when it comes to the eligibility of financing, for example, like banks usually accept from 5 to 8% of the people, maybe microfinance accept, I think, up to 15 or 16%. Maybe digital financing would accept like up to 25% if the company is aggressive, and so on. And we believe the solution for raising eligibility and access to financing in Egypt is by creating an ecosystem of data and models that would raise eligibility to surpass the 70% threshold. We really believe that there are no bad people. There are, of course, bad people who will default and so on, but most of the people usually are eligible for financial services. And the main problem is, we believe that it's mainly about, not having data and not having any information, or not having, a way to basically understand the behavior of the people, predict their willingness, predict their capability, and so on. And of course, it's one thing, it's a product problem, that's for sure. But the other thing is, with the unique data exposures that PayMob has, that Blink has, that any company that works in finance have, if we're able to, collect the community of the crowd, basically the wisdom of the crowd in a very model that collects all of the learnings from all of the people, and have this model as an alternative to, like, centralized credit bureaus, or like the traditional way that the more you try to build the traditional way, the more you try to break a circle into a box. You'll break the circle and you will never make it into a box. So access to financing needs a novel way of thinking. And we believe from the digital impact that all of the startups are having, from all the footprint, we think we can create something that would seismically shift the financial landscape completely. And this is something that we're trying to create through our work and through our platform.
So changing the financial sector and the access to finance, and specifically in the same direction that Amr was talking about.
Exactly. I would buy something though.
In closing, Azza, one thing that's going to happen, one big thing that's going to happen in 18 months from Amazon.
Ayman, I cannot. I am the only one who cannot.
Globally, not about Amazon, globally,
What I can talk about with confidence is that this is a company that has a very powerful innovation engine. So honestly, if we take the past and extrapolate into the future, there will be definitely much more innovations to come to serve not only the fintech sector, but most rising sectors, the rising sectors of the future. So stay tuned. We innovate by the hour. In this particular market, we are in constant enablement motion. Take advantage of what AWS is doing in the domain of enablement, so that you take advantage of this huge opportunity of AI.
This is fantastic. Just a couple of closing comments is, people were comparing what's happening in the AI space with what happened in the internet and all of that. But just to keep in mind, what happened in the AI space in about a year in terms of evolution of products is equivalent to what happened in the internet space in about 20 years. The curve is really exponential, and it's in a way scary how fast it's running. Second thing is a lot of applications and knowledge and technology that was not accessible to people is now accessible through infrastructure providers like Amazon Web Services in a way that's making it very possible for 2-3 people who are tech savvy to bring an innovation to the market that's really influential. And last point is that from the financial perspective, you can see the change on the layer that's consumer facing. So you guys are going to see products and services coming your way in the next 18 months that you have not seen before. But there's going to be a lot happening in the operations and plumbing of big companies that's AI driven, that's not going to be visible, that's going to change their financial performance. And it's going to be happening also at the infrastructure level that's going to be supporting that. So those are different layers. Most people are looking for the consumer facing, but the internal plumbing of companies, there's a lot happening in there. So thank you so much for everybody for being here. Thank you for Azza Shenawi, Head of Egypt and North Africa and Amazon Web Services, Ahmed Abaza, CEO of Synapse Analytics, Amr Sultan, CEO of Blink, and Mustafa Mnesi, CTO of PayMob. Thank you guys for the amazing discussion, and thank you for being here.